Have you ever finished a job interview and thought, wow, I really crushed it, only to find out that you didn't actually get the job? Well, in this video, I want to uncover some common mistakes that are happening before and during the interview. We're going to go pretty high level here, but I think some of these tips and tricks are really going to set you up for success. Item 1, human practice. I talk a lot about this in my videos, but there is a strong likelihood that during one of your latest interviews or at some point in your career, you went into those interviews and you did not practice with somebody else. And no matter the amount of prep, the value of getting somebody else's feedback, critique, opinions, whatever we want to call it, is critical. And one of the reasons why it's not happening is we're not building it into our plan, or we're making excuses to say nobody can help us. They don't really understand my space. And the reality is that if you're not putting it in your plan, that's something you just need to plan for. But if you feel like you don't have anybody that can help, pay a coach, because here's the importance. The value is landing that role at your dream company, making a bigger salary, getting away from that toxic boss. Maybe this is an opportunity to work remote. And these are all reasons why investing your time in practicing with somebody else is so important. And these critical insights and perspectives that they're going to give you just cannot be achieved by doing mirror work or by just recording yourself. You really need to get in there and epically fail with them a little bit, right? Because we want to go through some of these failure points with them so that it doesn't happen in the interview. And that's just a small part of it. A very small part of it is the words. What we really want to focus in on too is body language. And then of course, our video setup. We're in a global economy. So even after the pandemic, it's just going to be critical. We are going to continue to do video interviews. And I can even tell you back in 2013 at Google, we were doing video interviews then. And so this will continue to be a part of it with globally dispersed teams. You will always have this video component. So having them help you get that setup right is really critical. Item 2, our P.O.C. relationship. So oftentimes this is the recruiter, but it can also be the direct hiring manager, depending on the size of the company. And as candidates, we are just making it too hard on ourselves by not building these strong relationships up front. And the way we do that is we ask a ton of questions to our P.O.C. And the questions that come through in our lives are oftentimes we're blaming that person for not giving us all the information. And yeah, that definitely happens. But we can also take control of this entire situation by asking great questions about what's the setup of the interviews? What are the focus areas? What are the types of questions they like to ask? What are the steps in the process? And determining when we can expect to hear back. Lastly, also, what is your P.O.C.'s preferred method of communication? Let's ask that question. There's a lot of stuff to cover, and I'll put a card up there so I can get you to a video that covers everything. But again, this is one of the most common themes in our live sessions, is trying to get back that control too late in the process after you've already interviewed. And it's going to do a couple things, right? It will remove some stress, some anxiety early on, which is awesome. And it's going to be data too. If you ask great questions, you are going to get great data up front and make the interview process just a little bit easier for yourself. Now let's hop into the during the interview section. So item 3 is write and restate. And the percentage of people that answer the wrong question and or misinterpret the question is staggeringly high. If you do not write down and restate the question, the percentage chance that you're going to mess up at least one question, especially if you're going in on-sites or having multiple virtual on-sites, it's pretty much 100% that if you don't write it down and restate it, you're going to be answering the question wrong at least once. And so try it. Try a practice interview where you don't write anything down, don't restate it, and then after each question, have your practice interviewer ask you to restate it, and you'd be surprised at the hiccups we have. So that's important, right? Another critical reason why it's important, obviously we want to answer the right question, is listening skills. And so one of the things that all interviewers are looking for is your ability to listen, and they're going to translate that ability into seeing you in the job. If you can't listen to the interview questions, they are going to translate that into you can't listen in the job and they are not going to hire you. So just take your time capturing this data. And that correlates really well with item 4, taking your time. This is something that I have talked a lot about, but the vast majority of people take 1 second or less before they start answering the question. This means you've literally given your brain no time to process the information. Simply tell your recruiter you're going to take a minute to think about it. Now, pause moment. Everybody gets a lot of fear when this comes up, but the reality is that it's only awkward for you. Your interviewer is going to check their email. They'll be checking the sports scores. They'll be looking at the menu of where they're going to dinner that evening. So take your time, ideally not more than a minute, but gather your thoughts. Because overall, what's going to happen here is that your overall answers will actually get shorter by taking a minute up front. It will kind of remove some of that rambling. So let's talk about what to focus on in this time. Now, for behavioral questions, these are the questions that people are typically not taking any time on because you have your examples prepared. But we need to think a little bit about the pivot point. What is the question really asking, and how are we adapting our examples just a little bit to focus the situation and make sure that we're outlining how we're clearly going to answer the question, and then pivoting and focusing our actions and results a little bit more on what the question is asking. This is a constant huge mistake, and it's oftentimes ignored, but really, really critical. You will have way better behavioral answers if you slow down a little bit. For open-ended and hypothetical questions, I recommend taking your time before even your clarifying questions. And I know this can feel strange because we often think we want a data gather and get that information first, but we just need to incorporate any of that data into our plan. If we get any information, we already have a set plan and we can just add those data points. So start to quickly think about your clarifying questions. You're going to have those down on your cheat sheet and then maybe a couple nuanced questions based on the question. Then you're going to be looking at your go-to frameworks and picking one. The real time spent here and slowing down is thinking about your assumptions. And then what is that framework concept or two that you're going to focus in on in the solution? So few people take their time. Just slow down a little bit. It will be incredibly impactful. And remember, it's awkward for you, not for your interviewer. Item 5, visuals. So simply put, if we're not creating a visual image for our interviewer, we're not really connecting with them. And the likelihood of success, especially throughout the interview, is going to continue to go down if we're not making these connections. Now, let's talk about both sides of the coin. So a few areas where it shows up on the behavioral side, definitely in that situation. I don't know anything about you. I don't really know the specifics of what you're trying to solve, and I don't know the timeline. Then we get into the actions, and I maybe have some basic details about some research, some chatting, maybe some execution, maybe presentations, but you've never visually put me there. And in the results, of course, the results stay too vague too. And then I don't really have that final complete piece and I can't picture it. Now, on the open-ended side, this is all about assumptions. And there is a constant fear. And that fear is that, well, we are going to narrow our focus too much. They're not going to like our assumptions. But the alternative is way worse. Without assumptions, we are going to stay in this fluffy high-level zone. And a lot of times what I tell my clients is they might be an eng manager or they might be an architect. These are skills that I don't have at all, but I tell them I could have given that answer because it stayed so high level that we were just talking about really, really superficial high-level concepts and we never really got anywhere. So with assumptions, we have to call out the type of client, the type of process, the type of technology challenge we were having. Just a few very, very good specifics to get me connected to how we're going to solve, because those visuals are going to be game changers in regards to your success. I know a lot of this stuff is high level, but if we can just do these 5 items well in terms of our overall prep, in terms of slowing down and writing the things down and creating great visuals, we are going to have massive success in our interviews. Good luck.